Welcome to the channel, everybody. I'm excited you're here, and I'm excited to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien's Smith of Wootton Major and Farmer Giles of Ham. So I have them both together in this little book. I feel like most of the times I've seen it, they both come together. I'm going to talk about them both, starting with Smith of Wootton Major. So the world of Wootton Major is very interesting because there's hardly anything that describes it at the beginning, other than there's like Wootton Minor and Wootton Major, and Major's bigger. So we don't really know. I mean, I guess you could quickly just guess that this is a totally made up world. We know with Lord of the Rings, Tolkien intended Middle Earth to be this kind of like prehistory to Europe, to England. I don't know if that's the case with Wootton Major. I would just kind of guess it's a totally made up place. So we don't really know time or place. It's just like, this is where they live. Whatever kind of pops into your head, that's where they live. But what I do like about it is, even though he leaves that kind of up to the reader, there's still this sense of like history and like tradition, and most of that is kind of found in the town of Wootton Major and in their tradition of having a chef, like a master chef who's really, really good, and he cooks for the whole village for certain festivals, like for essentially his whole life. They usually have long careers, and then they pass the torch to the next chef. And one of the big kind of plot points in this tradition is the making of the great cake during this certain festival. Forgive me, I could be wrong. I believe it's like every 24 years. They don't do it every year, and there's like a chunk of time in between. That's the main point. I should also say there might be minor spoilers, guys. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers in these stories, but there might be some small ones, so I apologize. Just be aware of that. But continuing on. Back to the great cake. There's this tradition of putting like trinkets kind of in the cake for the kids so that they can kind of like cut through the cake and find a little prize. Not every kid gets one, but it's fun and they look forward to it. Well, the main part of this story, there's a fairy star that gets put into the cake. Now there's, talk about it's just, shiny rock. It's not really a fairy star, and they put it in there. So the choice to put this fairy star in the cake leads us to our main character and the turn of events to follow. So the young boy who finds it, he grows up and becomes a smith. What do you know? And again, without giving too many things away, he begins to venture into fairyland, which is not far from Wootton Major. It kind of like borders their land. And because he has this star, it in a way kind of grants him access, like a pass basically. So there's kind of this back and forth of him with his family and telling them stories about fairyland, and them wishing him well on his journey, and the people in the town, what they think, if it's a star or not, and why he does what he does. So something I enjoy about, fairy tales in general, and this story, is there's still like an element, a theme of like a quest, something that you have to do, something that you have to do honorably in order to successfully achieve the quest. And, some people are selfish. They maybe want to keep a prize to themselves, or they try to get someone else to do something for them in the process, when like the whole point is you do the quest. Like, that's how you grow. So I like the idea of, this is what you're supposed to do. You know that the person who told you this is trustworthy and it's the right thing to do. So I like that. So I struggled a little bit kind of with putting words together for the ending of this, because I was thinking about the end of the story when I read it, and it's like, in a way, it's kind of enigmatic. Not totally. It's not like you don't understand it, but I really believe Tolkien wrote it this way on purpose, to fill you with this sense of like imaginative wonder of like, what happens next? What does this mean for the town? What does this mean for the smith? So it's not like it doesn't have an ending. It's just kind of a peculiar ending. It's just like, I don't know if I would have thought that it would have ended that way. So it's not bad by any means. I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was really unique. And I think overall, a great way to describe this read in general is just delightful. Like, I just had a good time reading it, and it was, a little bit mysterious and fun, and it was just intriguing of like, where's he gonna go? Who's he gonna talk to next? So yeah, the whole time I was reading it, I just had this sense of wonder and just delight, and the imagery is really pretty, and it's just fun. It's a good story. Moving right along to Farmer Giles of Ham. I really thought this one was a lot of fun. I feel like there's a lot of humor in it, and I think it's very intentional. So essentially, it's the story of an unlikely hero thrust into the role of a village protector after he defends his land from a giant. Without spoiling anything, he gets the giant to leave, and that's really kind of what kickstarts all the other events after. So this giant then has a conversation with these other giants, and there's a dragon nearby that's actually listening in on the conversation. But the dragon doesn't truly understand what happened the night that Farmer Giles confronted the giant. So this sets the dragon off to start terrorizing all these different towns, and he keeps moving closer and closer to Ham. So at this point, all the villagers are scared. They can see the smoke rising and the destruction happening around them in the forests. And they're like, hey, you need to take care of this. And he, you know, like, I feel like most people who aren't like brought up to be knights or something like that, you know, he's just like a farmer. He's like, I doesn't really want to go do that. It's a scary thing to do. He's like, I want to just take care of my fields and my cattle. So he kind of tries to make excuses like, well, you know, I'll go check it out, but I gotta do this first. You know, so it's kind of funny. He keeps kind of trying to wiggle his way out of it a little bit, but then he actually becomes commissioned by the king to do it. And he's like, well, you know, gotta do it at this point. Like there's no way around it. So the village actually kind of cobbles together this kind of like homemade chainmail for him to wear, and they give him a helmet and stuff, and they send him off. And the king gave him a sword actually for defeating the giant. And you know, like Tolkien does, he gives things a lot of different names, but the like common name for it is called Tailbiter. It's a sword that actually has a history of slaying dragons. So it actually has like a special power to it. So as I said before, it's just a lot of fun. His interaction with the dragon to me is really humorous because he realizes that the dragon's afraid of the sword, and then he gets some courage kind of rising up in him, and he starts confronting him. And yeah, he doesn't want a dragon either. He just wants to farm, take care of his crops, take care of his cows, be left alone. The dragon's funny because, you know, just like in a lot of stories with Tolkien, they're very conniving. They're full of trickery and deceit. They're always trying to wiggle their way out of situations. I like the way he depicted this dragon because although similar in the traits of, say, like Smaug from The Hobbit, he's not as cunning or as wise. And thankfully, Farmer Giles is not strictly a pushover. He's, you know, maybe not the brightest person in town, but he's smart enough to know that dragons are always gonna lie. That's a very interesting interaction between the two of them. So again, to be careful not to spoil anything by talking about how it ends, I do want to say that I overall found it to be very humorous, but also to be dramatic as well and just engaging. Like, the dragon is destroying things and like eating people, you know, like that's pretty intense stuff. But, you know, just to see the courage actually rise up in Farmer Giles is really neat. You know, to see also the display of true courage versus like this idea of kind of vain nobility amongst the king and his knights, and how they approach the situation versus how Farmer Giles approaches the situation. I thought that was really actually unique, especially for, I guess, a children's story, a fairy tale. That's not to say that this story isn't for all ages. I would say anybody could read the story and enjoy it. I would also say though, if you know of any kids who like stories like this, or you do like a reading time and you need a book for reading time or something like that, I would definitely recommend both of these stories. But yeah, I think they're a lot of fun. They're full of imagination and wonder and just beautiful imagery, and they're special. Like, I don't know, maybe that's too simple of a word, but it's true. They're just special. So obviously I would recommend checking these books out as a whole, especially if you like J.R.R. Tolkien and The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and all of his works. It's definitely a great addition to your library of Tolkien books. So that's my review of Smith of Wootton Major and Farmer Giles of Ham. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and it would really help this channel. As always, guys, I so appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the next one.